Okay, welcome everybody to the Denver Kehillah probing the Parsha. This week is a double Parsha, Parshat Vayakel Pekudei. Today is March 15th, double Parsha, Vayakel Pekudei. And we're going to focus on Betzalel. Betzalel, I mentioned Betzalel in Shul last Shabbos. He was not the architect, but the craftsperson of the Mishkan. Who was charged with fashioning the various kelim that were in the Mishkan. And today we're going to we'll just look at the psukim first, then we'll look at a really interesting Gemara about Betzalel, and then a commentary of the Meshech Chochmah about maybe 2 points from the Meshech Chochmah about Betzalel, about how he viewed the Mishkan and I think what we're going to try to take away from today's class is there relevance for us today in the Mishkan, right? The Mishkan. It's hard enough to find relevance, I guess, I think in the Beit HaMikdash, but the Mishkan may even be harder because it was temporary and then of course not used, and seems like it was only for the generation of the Midbar and the early Bnei Yisrael when they first settled in Eretz Yisrael. Is there anything that we could take away from the Mishkan? That's what we're going to try to do today. That's our goal. So we'll see at the end if we reach our goal. So the psukim that we're going to focus on, can you guys see this on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so the psukim that we're going to focus on are Shemot Lamed Hey, Lamed through Lamed Gimel, 35, 30 through 33. Vayomer Moshe el Bnei Yisrael Re'u Kirah Hashem b'Shem Betzalel ben Uri ben Chor Lamatei Yehuda. Moshe told Bnei Yisrael, look, God has singled out Betzalel. He's the guy. He's the one who's going to be the craftsperson. And God has endowed him with all sorts of great quality, ability, knowledge, every kind of craft. He's very talented. God-given talents. To make things out of gold and silver and copper. So he was also a master metalsmith, I guess, is that the term? Uvecharoshet aven limalot uvecharoshet eitz. Also, he was expert in cutting stone and carving wood. Everything possible. This guy was just incredibly blessed and incredibly talented in terms of that. So that's what we hear about. That's what we hear about Betzalel. Whenever I read these psukim, I always think of, and now we just went through it again. We went through it once in our life when we lived in Houston. I always think of the contractors and the subcontractors who do work in the house. I'm like, maybe I could hang up a picture like straight on the wall. And every time I see these craftspeople, and we saw it a lot going through the renovation of this house, it's just like I'm astonished, and I think like what skill do I don't have a physical skill, something that I could do. I guess I could put books on a bookshelf, but only once the bookshelf is built. So whenever I read these psukim about Betzalel, metal and wood and everything imaginable. So I'm always very impressed. Now the Gemara. So I think it's always important to note that, like, we in our community we have different types of skills, different types of things that we do. Most of us, are sitting down for most of our jobs, and we have certain types of jobs. There's a whole other communities that excel, in other things, and it's just really it's worth recognizing. Okay, Then we have this really neat Gemara that records a conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Betzalel. And it's sort of a little bit of an argument as to what's going to be built first when it comes to the Mishkan. Was the outside, the sort of the frame, that what we call the house, built first, or were the kalim built first? Were the items that were going to be inside the Mishkan going to be built first? So the Gemara says as follows: Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonatan, Betzalel al Shem Chochmato Nikra. Betzalel, his name is based on the account of his wisdom. Now, Betzalel, you may notice, is made up of two words: Sel El, which means the shadow of God. Okay, Betzalel is the shadow of God. And so the Gemara is saying here that there's something about this name. It's just not it's not just a name. The name expresses a particular character of Betzalel, and it's based on this story. So I guess we have to assume that Betzalel's mother had some sort of Ruach HaKodesh or some sort of divine assistance in giving him this name. And the Gemara says, "B'sha'a she'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe lech emor lo leBetzalel aseli Mishkan Aron v'kelim." When God told Moshe, "Go to Betzalel and tell him to make the Mishkan as well as the ark and the vessels," right? The Mishkan, the ark, and the vessels. So that's a specific order, right? Make the house first, and then the ark, and then the vessels. That's what God told Moshe to do. Halach Moshe v'hafach. We're not going to focus on that, but this is interesting too. Moshe went and he reversed the order. V'amar asay Aron v'chelim u'mishkan. He told Betzalel, "Look, I want you to make the kelim first, like the Aron and the other kelim, and then I want you to build a house." So we're not going to get into why Moshe switched it, but he did. Amar lo. So then Betzalel said to him, "Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher, minago shel olam adam boneh bayit v'akar kach machnis letocho kelim." The normal way of doing things is that a person first builds a house, and then they put the kelim in, right? Only then do they put the vessels in. V'ata omer, and you're telling me, aseli Aron v'chelim mishkan, you're telling me to do the ark and the vessels and then the mishkan? That doesn't make any sense. Kelim shani oseh, after all, Betzalel says, these vessels that I'm going to make, lehechan achnisam, where am I going to put them? Well, I guess they didn't have one of those rat packs or one of those things you put in your driveway when you're doing renovations to put your stuff in. Where am I going to put this stuff once I build it? So then Moshe says, Shema kach amar l'cha HaKadosh Baruch Hu, asay Mishkan Aron v'kelim. Maybe, he says, is it possible? So this is still Betzalel. Is it possible that that God said to you, perhaps God said the following: first you should make the Mishkan, and then the various kelim. He sort of intuited what God had originally told Moshe Rabbeinu. Amar lo Shema Betzalel El Hayita V'Yadata, and then Moshe is sort of astounded, and he says, perhaps you were in God's shadow. That's the name, right? Betzalel. You were in God's shadow, and you knew exactly what he said to do. So Moshe is very impressed here with Betzalel, and Betzalel actually figured out intuitively, this is part of his Chochmah, part of his wisdom, what God had wanted to begin with. So that's the Gemara, and we are. I want to now turn our attention. So again, we could spend some time unpacking this question of why or how is it that Moshe reversed what God wanted, but we'll save that for another time. What I want to do now is look at a commentary of the Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah says something very interesting about the Kalim, about this whole question about the order of the Mishkan. So the Meshech. So let me just stop here and pause for a second. Anyone have any comments or questions? Anything you want to add? Anything they've heard about this that they want to share? Okay. Okay. So here we go. Here's the Meshech Chochmah. Ubegemara perak haroeh Betzalel el hayiti. We're right over here. Sorry. Let me just highlight where we are so people have lost track. Right, we're right there where the purple highlight is. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Biur ha'inyan kach. So what's the meaning of this Gemara? Right, the Meshech Chochmah wants to understand this Gemara. There must be more to it than a story of Betzalel just deciding to change the order. Biur ha'inyan kach, de pratiut shel Yisrael kadosh. This is really important. Every individual Jewish person is holy. Every individual Jewish person is unique. Every individual person, human being, Jews included, are created b'tselem Elokim. We have a unique thing about us, and we also have holiness. So it's interesting, right? Judaism doesn't totally erase the importance of individuality. Religions, generally speaking, is a group exercise, and a lot of what we do in our community and in religion is we set aside a little bit our own personal desires, sometimes our personal needs, for the good of the family, for the good of the community. That's certainly an element of Judaism. It's an element of religions in general. And, it's an element of building a society, right? In a society, we have to share the space we're in. And that sometimes means, I may want to speed on the street, but I can't because it's dangerous. Right? I may want to do whatever it is, but I can't because it's not safe for other people. However, but it's important to know, but nonetheless, the pratiyut shel Yisrael kadosh, right? Every individual or the individual element of the Jewish people is important and holy. Aval sharei kedushot yoter. Other holiness is even more holy. Aval klal Yisrael ein domeh lahen v'chol habriyah kula b'shvil Yisrael shenikra rishit. However, the Jewish people as a whole, nothing could be compared to them. And here the Meshech Chochmah shares this idea that the whole world was created for the Jewish people. It's hard to understand exactly what that means, right? But the whole world was created for the Jewish people. V'lachein ha-Mishkan hu Yisrael. So now he's going to get into the Mishkan. The Mishkan is not representative of an individual. The Mishkan represents the Jewish people. It's actually a nice, I think, connection here to congregational, to shul life. Right? The Mishkan represents the Jewish people. Shebechibor hakarashim v'hakarasim v'hayirayot naseh ha'olal echad. The outside of the Mishkan was made up of boards and curtains, and they were all connected to each other, right, to create one ohel, to create one unit, one tent. Just like the Jewish people, right, are supposed to be connected and represent one whole. Ulekach b'pratiyut ha'asiyah b'truma niskar kelim. So now he's going to try to understand the order of the way the Mishkan is presented in the various parsha, because as you may have been aware, right, the building of the Mishkan is talked over, is explained through a number of parshiot, and sometimes it's the kelim first, and sometimes it's the building first. Sometimes it's the utensils first, sometimes it's the building first. So he says when it comes to parsha Teruma, niskar kelim, first the individual utensils are mentioned, the achar kach mishkan, and only after that is the building mentioned. Ha'aron mikudash yoter mipratiyut Yisrael. The Aron is holier than an individual person, right? It's got this holiness. Aval bichlalut b'parshat Ki Tisa. However, when we're talking about Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, which is in Parshat Ki Tisa, Kitiv Mishkan Kodem. So what the Meshech Chochmah is trying to do is trying to explain why in Truma we talk about the Kalim first, and why in Ki Tisa we talk about the Mishkan first. So in Truma, it's talking about the Mishkan as representative or symbolizing the individual Jew. So that's why the Kalim come first. But when it comes to Ki Tisa, we're talking about the Klal, the community, the Jewish people, and therefore the Mishkan is told first. Shezeh ikar hakavana shehamishkan sheklal b'nei Yisrael ba'im b'tocho. This is the purpose that the Mishkan has of when all the Jewish people come together in it. Mikudash yoter mimakom hamiyuad l'shchinato yitbarach. It's even holier than a specific place, right? It's interesting. The Aron Kodesh is the place where God's presence supposedly rested in the Mishkan. And the Meshech Chochmah is saying that's true, but the actual building itself, because it symbolizes and represents all of the Jewish people, that's even holier. Mikudash yoter mimakom hamiyuad l'shchinato yitbarach sheklalut eda kidosha ein la shiur. This is amazing, right? When the Jews are together, when they are a connected Edah, there's no limit to their holiness. Ein la shiur. There's no limit to their holiness. Lakach Betzalel shehaya yodel etzaref otiyot v'haya baki, and we're going to learn another Gemara in a minute that Betzalel knew how to join the letters of in a certain way. And he knew how to connect the letters in a way that would create something awesome and new. That does not exist with individuals, only with the klal. Right? When God created the world, right? He said it was tov ma'od. That's the collective. Kain be Yisrael, lachein hiktim hamishkan. Therefore, the Jews as well. That's why Betzalel intuited that first you have to build the Mishkan. Meaning, what the Meshech Chochmah is doing, saying the Gemara that we just read, that seems to be a very practical conversation between Moshe and Betzalel. God said Mishkan first. Moshe said Kalim first, and Betzalel said, "Where am I supposed to put this stuff? Let me build the building first, and then I'll put the stuff there." So that sounds like a very practical conversation. The Meshech Chochmah says, no, this is not, it wasn't Betzalel just being practical. It was Betzalel saying, we have to build the Mishkan first, because the Mishkan represents Am Yisrael as a klal, as a group. That's the greatest holiness, and that's what we have to start with, right? So it's interesting that at the beginning, the Meshech Chochmah talks about individual Jew as being holy. That's true. However, it does not compare. That holiness cannot compare to the holiness of Am Yisrael, which the Meshech Chochmah says, Ein la shiur, right? Has no limit. There's no limit to the sanctity that the group can attain. Okay. By the way, there's a corollary to this in Tfilah B'tzibur, right? Not necessarily a minyan, but davening as a group, right? Anyone have a sense of what's the connection, but let's say between what the Meshech Chochmah is saying and the idea of davening with a group?
I mean, I thought I've heard, a minyan has holiness to it and a group, and but you're saying even less than that, just even davening with a group, period. Is
minyan for sure, a group, yeah. And the reason that I've seen is actually in the Kuzari, where he makes this really interesting point about why we daven with a group. And what he says is that when you daven with a group, there's a chance that at one point of the davening, my kavanah is not going to be good, and someone else is not going to be good, but someone else is going to have the right kavanah. And so by the time you put the whole group together, there's a very good chance that there was proper kavanah for every part of the davening, even if individuals did not have kavanah for every part of the davening. But when I was missing my kavanah, you had your kavanah. And when you didn't have your kavanah, I had the kavanah. And so a group is able to sort of present a more complete tefillah to God than an individual is. Because if I'm davening alone and I don't have kavanah for one particular bracha, well, that's it. That tefillah is then, I guess, damaged goods. But if I'm davening with a group, then we have the opportunity to really help each other. That's what tefillah b'tzibur. That's tefillah b'tzibur. So I'm not sure if that only applies to a minyan. It seems like it would apply to any group of people who are davening in a group. So this notion at the end of Betzalel knowing how to connect the letters, this is the Gemara that the Meshech Chochmah is talking about. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Yodea haya Betzalel tzaref otiyot shenivru behen shamayim va'aretz. Not only was Betzalel a great craftsperson, he also knew how to join the letters from which heaven and earth were created. And I'm not sure what he did with that, but according to the Meshech Chochmah, he had this ability to litzaref. That's the point that he's trying to make. Litzaref means to combine. So Betzalel understood the importance of combining, right? The importance of the klal, of the group. Ketiv hacha vayimaleo to ruach Elohim b'chachma uv'tfuna uv'dat. The pasuk says, and I have filled him with spirit of God in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge. Uketiv hatam Hashem b'chachma yasad eretz konein shamayim b'tfuna. And there's another pasuk that says, the Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by understanding he established the heavens. And it is written also, b'dato tehomot nivka'u. By his knowledge, the depths were broken up and the skies dropped down. So the world was created with Chochmah, right? That's what the pasuk said, the psukim say. And Betzalel had Chochmah, as the pasuk says, Vayimaleo to ruach Elokim b'Chochmah. So Betzalel had wisdom. The world was created with wisdom. It's a sort of a classic, what we call in the Gemara, a gezerat shaveh, when there's words that are the same or similar. The assumption is that the character is similar between the two events, or between the two ideas. And so here the idea is Betzalel and creation, and since God was the creator of the world, and that's talked about being done with Chochmah, Betzalel had Chochmah, and so he had, really, it's quite an astonishing and bold Gemara. He sort of had this godlike ability of creation. It's really, it's another interesting point in the sense that I think one could argue that one of the ways that we see that the human being is created b'tselem Elokim is through our creativity, because ultimately God is the greatest creator. God's the only one who can create something from nothing. But then came along the human being, and we created everything from almost nothing, right? And that's godlike, right? That's a very godlike quality. Rabbi Soloveitchik talks about this a lot, that we are supposed, and this goes back to Betzalel being a creator and seeing people working on homes and projects like that, right? They have this creative ability. On one level, that creative ability to build and to create, whether it's art or a building or anything else, that is I would say a high level illustration of Tzelem Elokim, being created in the image of God, because God is the creator. And so here we have this Meshech Chochmah telling us that's what Betzalel was showing everyone. Betzalel was showing everyone that he's really tapped into what it means to be a creator and a builder, and tapped into this notion of tziruf, of connecting as a source of wholeness. So when we go back to the Pesukim, we talk about Betzalel's Chochmah. So that's his Chochmah, the Chochmah of creativity, and to use that creativity to understand that real Kedusha comes from the group. So that's sort of the first point I wanted to make. I wanted to just share one other brief idea, because it's sort of related to this. I'll say it very quickly. I'll say it outside instead of inside. The Ramban, right? The Ramban, Nachmanides, has a really interesting explanation as to what the Mishkan was for. The Mishkan, says the Ramban, was essentially a portable Har Sinai. So some of the similarities are that the Jewish people were encamped around Har Sinai, and they then continue to be encamped around the Mishkan. Another similarity is we had the burning incense in the Mishkan, which created a cloud, which sort of mimics the cloud cover over Har Sinai. God spoke to Bnei Israel from a specific point from between the Kruvim, those two cherubs, and God spoke from a specific point to Bnei Israel as well. So there are a lot of similarities when it comes to what was going on at Har Sinai and the Mishkan. And the Ramban says that the whole point was to accompany Bnei Israel from the Midbar to Eretz Israel with this constant sense of being accompanied by God, and this constant sense of a continuing revelation, between God and the Jewish people. So what's missing, however, is if you look at the Mishkan also had a walls around it. And where is the parallel to that at Har Sinai? Right, where's the parallel to that at Har Sinai? And so here the Meshech Chochmah says something which is so beautiful. I'll just read a few sentences. He says as follows: Hagbalat et ha'am saviv, right? The people, right, surrounded the Mishkan. Ha'inyan da'hakavod eloki v'hanevuah haya ad makom sheYisrael omdim gad hahar u'kemo shamar panim b'panim dibar Hashem. God's holiness came up until where the people were standing around Har Sinai. Just like when the Beit HaMikdash was built, one could touch the outside wall but couldn't come in. These walls separated between one area of sanctity and everything outside. The Jewish people themselves, he says, were the mechitzot, were the barriers, the walls, the separation between God's holiness, which was on the inside of Har Sinai, so to speak, and everyone else, right, who was on the outside. You weren't allowed to touch the mountain. The sanctity went up until where the people were standing. That's what it means when it says the people served as this boundary. You can't touch them out. And then he goes on to say, if you look at the Mishkan, right, the Mishkan had all of these pillars standing up around it, which could also then be representative. If we go back to our original question, how does the Mishkan mimic Har Sinai? Well, if the people were the boundary around Har Sinai, then each of those beams that served as the outer walls of the Mishkan represent individual Jews. But you have to remember that each of those beams were connected to each other, right? And so we come back to the idea of klal, right? We're not standing around Har Sinai as individuals. we're not being represented by individual beams around the Mishkan. We're actually connected. Each beam, each individual Jew is connected, and therefore, only when we're connected are we able to provide a proper sort of barrier, which either, when we look at that barrier, one of two ways, keeps the non-holiness out from where the holiness is, but also keeps the holiness in, right? And I think that's really a neat way to look at it, right? When Klal Yisrael is working together, right, then we manage to sort of keep our holiness. When we're not working together, then it could sort of leak out, right? If those beams were not, tightly connected, then the kedusha could sort of seep out, and we would lose it. So this is I think this is an extension of what the Meshech Chochmah said earlier, that the Betzalel's genius was his recognition that what was most important was the one Mishkan, but now we say that one Mishkan is really made up of all the individual Jews, and if we sort of stick together, then there's a much better chance of us maintaining and sort of protecting our kedusha, maintaining and protecting our holiness. So that's a little bit of an insight into Betzalel and into his wisdom and into really why God chose him, because he wasn't only practical about where am I supposed to put the stuff. He understood that Bnei Israel does much better, like the analogy to tefillah. Right? We do much better when we work together with each other than we do when we work as individuals. So yeah, thank you everybody. Any comments or questions?
Betzalel had innate talent, or he was imbued with it? Like, was he talented and then he got extra stuff given to him? Like, yeah.
That's a good question. So let's look at the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Vayimaleo to ruach Elokim," that God filled him with it. So I'm not sure. We can let's go back and look at some of the commentaries on the psukim to see if they talk about this word vayimale as being, let's see. See, interesting. See what the Ibn Ezra says? That God bore witness that Betzalel was saturated with wisdom, meaning he had it. That's fascinating.
God bore witness. So he witnessed that he had this. He's saying, I see that he has this.
Yeah, I see that he has this. Hashem He'id Kihu. He was just saying, listen, this is your guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because the pasuk sounds like God is saying, I'm going to give this to him. Or Moshe is saying that God gave this to him. But really, what the Ibn Ezra says is that no, he was simply declaring that he's the guy. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
See if anyone else weighs in on this, at least on Sefaria. Datzakanim doesn't say where from. Interesting, similar language that Datzakanim points out about Shlomo when he built the Beit HaMikdash. So similar language was used about his wisdom.
Both of them, yeah.
Let's go to T. I have to go somewhere else for that. I'm not going to open that up now. Okay, so see the Ibn Ezra, it's really interesting what he says. Here it is. Oh, this is perfect. This is beautiful. The Rush, Vayimaleo Teruach Elokim, building off the Ibn Ezra, or I'm not sure who came first. I think the Rush. Shekvar Haitabo Chochmah. He already had the Chochmah. Lelamdecha she'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mimalei Chochmah ela lemi shehaya bo kvar. So the Rush is being very clever. Vayimalei, this is a bad translation. He endowed. It means he filled him. meaning he had some and God just topped it off.
Yep, there you go.
Right? So that's really neat. That's really interesting. I like this statement to teach us that God does not give Chochmah to anyone other than those who already had it. Right? So we work on ourselves, we develop a little Chochmah, and then hopefully we get some extra help. But we have to start off ourselves, right? It's God's not gonna. I've said this before a few times. I had a Hebrew teacher in high school who used to say, you have to do the tuchus work. You got to sit down and learn. And then if you sit down and learn, then maybe God will do a little vayimaleo. But it doesn't come on its own. Beautiful. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. And not at all what I would expect it. I would have expected it to be God gave it to him. But now, if you read carefully, vayimale, it means he filled it up, but the tank wasn't empty.
Yeah. And
Nice.
my uncle's version of your rabbi was, he's telling me as a kid, you have to get your ass in gear. That's what he used to always say.
Right. Exactly. Right. All right. Okay. Any other comments? Yitzi?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Moshe, do you want to say something?
All right. I was gonna say the other thing that the Moshe one where he flipped it, I was just thinking of Purim, like a Nafachu type of.
Right. Maybe it was Purim Torah.
Same time of year, yeah.
Moshe's Purim Torah. Right. Okay, great. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yitzi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it looks like in Kitisa, the beginning of chapter 31, where they use the future tense of Betzalel. Betzalel still uses ba'amalei, the word fill, but for his buddy Ahaliav, it says natati. Chochmah.
Oh,
so I don't know.
What pasuk are you in?
This is 31. Gimel is for Betzalel, and then Vav is for Ahaliav.
Ba'amaleo Torah Elokim. Good. That tracks with what we just saw. Oh, and here we're going to be able to see, I think, the Hamek Davar, the Netziv, who said we should look here. So what does he say? The Mishkan. Okay. And Aliyav is where?
6.
Vani hini natati ito et Aliyav. V'natati Chochmah. Wow, that's interesting. Let's see if anyone mentions that distinction. You see, Rashi doesn't distinguish. Rashi seems to be saying that Betzalel and Ahaliav were given as opposed to what we saw earlier. This is interesting. The Ibn Ezra, no, it doesn't talk about the Vinatati specifically, but that's a good. Thank you for bringing that up. That is really interesting.
Yeah, I would think they should mean different things going off with Ibn Ezra.
I would think, yeah. I would think that, yeah. I'm not sure what to make of that, but that's let's do some more research about that. But that's really fascinating. It seems like it should be different.
Okay. Yeah, and I just thought of it a minute ago when I remember. Yeah. I don't have any answer.
Okay. Now I'm going to be up late. All right. Yeshkoach, everyone.
Thank
Got
you.
work to do. Thank you for joining. Always a pleasure to learn with you.
Yes. likewise.
And hope to see you soon. Hope to see you in shul. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And thanks again. Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Lakota.
Good night.